In this video, I'm going to show you the best foods to eat and to avoid when you're in a flare. Whether you have IBS, Crohn's, or colitis, or any other autoimmune diseases, this is going to be extremely helpful for you. It's important to watch what you eat while you're healing to give your body the nutrients it needs to repair as fast as possible, but there's also something else going on behind the scenes that will literally make it impossible for you to heal your gut, even if you're eating the best foods in the world. So I'm going to share with you both of these things, but mainly we're going to be focusing on the foods that we need to eat to heal our gut and the different types of, guys, if you don't know the information inside this video, you just will never heal your flare. It will just keep going on and on and on forever because we're not addressing the root cause of the problem. So, all right, there are two types of flares. There's one that is associated with an epicrisis. Now, this is German New Medicine terminology that I'm using. So, when a flare starts, okay, it starts after a traumatic event. So, boom, there's a traumatic event. It puts our gut into overdrive. It starts to develop extra gut cells in most cases. You don't have symptoms during when this is happening. Then the conflict gets resolved. The body starts to get rid of these extra gut cells. And then that's when someone could consider themselves in a flare. They're having lots of diarrhea. There's lots of gut pain because there's physical. So during this phase, extra gut cells are developing. And then when the conflict gets resolved, we don't need these high maintenance cells anymore. Let's get rid of them. Painful, bloody, diarrhea, mucousy process. Not fun. And then, so someone could be considered a flare here, flare, flare, flare. And then there's an epicrisis where during this phase, a lot of water comes into the tissue to aid with the cell removal. Then there's this spike of fight or flight sympathetic activity where it squeezes the water out of the cells. And there's also activity happening in the brain as well. So we're also experience fever and headaches, and so that's the epicrisis. And then we go into the scarring phase, which we still have symptoms, but they're a lot less, and life starts to go back to normal. Now, someone could have a flare. In a perfect world, someone has a flare for a couple of days or maybe a week or two, and then life goes back to normal. In that case, most people, they don't have to do anything. They just have to relax and it will go away. And that's probably what happens 90% of the time. But people like you and I, during the conflict shock, a lot of PTSD triggers formed. And this just keeps us trapped in this healing phase. So somebody who's stuck in a flare, who's constantly having diarrhea 10 times a day, we need to deal with these PTSD triggers. And this could take some time. I help people do this I have a 13-day protocol where I help people do this. There's a free mini version in the bio link where I go over the details on this. But in the meantime, while someone's tracking down these PTSD triggers, there's some dietary things we can do to make life a lot better. Because when all of this is happening, your body is burning through a lot of calories, a lot of sugar, a lot of protein. Let's say, you eat something. It usually takes 24 hours to fully digest and absorb something, depending on what it is, just on average. But if you're going to the bathroom 10 times a day, you are literally digesting and absorbing very little of what you eat. But there are certain foods you can eat where even if you're going 10 times a day, you're pretty much absorbing 100% of that food. So, all right. Now, this is one of the first foods I try to get people to eat, and they're going to fight me on it. because one of the most popular diets to go on is the keto, carnivore, or the specific carbohydrate or the GAPS diet. And essentially what these diets, their philosophy is sugar is bad because, you know, again, most of what we do is subconscious. Most of our beliefs were formed subconscious. And so for the past like 30, 40 years in nutrition, it's, oh, sugar's bad. Sugar's bad for you. It's just the devil. Sugar's evil. So there's that narrative kind of floating around in the background, but then recently it's sugar's feeding candida, sugar's feeding bad bacteria and fungi, which doesn't make any sense because, you know, if we're looking at the digestive system right here, if you have soda, if you have orange juice, all of it is getting absorbed in the stomach. It's not even making it to the intestines to feed the candida and the bacteria and the colon, you know, what's going on in the small intestines and the colon. It doesn't even get there. And you'll see a lot of carnivores, you know, they can only do it for so long before their body, their brain, their subconscious mind creates such strong urges to get sugar. So you'll see a lot of carnivores do it for a year or two, and then they resort to eating fruits, which is fine. But your body is burning through a ton of energy, and it needs sugar. Sugar. It needs sugar. Now, things like orange juice, you know, has a lot of vitamin C. It's going to be used, you need vitamin C to stitch the proteins in your gut back together. Yes, it's pure sugar. Oh, but isn't it better if I, you know, eat the orange juice because it has full fiber and blah, blah, blah. It won't spike my blood sugar levels. Look, your body is so, especially if you're underweight, your body is so malnourished, we need to spike, we need to get this into your system as fast as possible. So if you eat this, so let's say you eat a full orange, right? It comes with the fiber. Fiber is not easy to digest, number one. And then it's delaying digestion and absorption for hours. And you go to the bathroom twice an hour or once an hour. We need to get you the orange, we need to get you sugar in a liquid format so it enters, so it gets absorbed in your stomach as fast as possible so it doesn't get eliminated by the diarrhea. So orange juice, you can add honey to whatever tea you're consuming or whatever drink you like to consume. There's soda. Now, in America, in the United States, most of the soda is made with disgusting high fructose corn syrup. But you know, I suggest you get your hands on, you know, some sort of an organic soda made with evaporated cane juice, which is sugar in its whole form, or, you know, find some sort of, you know, soda that has a good amount of sugar in it. There's a lot of like organic sodas that have very little sugar in it. Especially if you're underweight, your body is burning through a ton of calories. We need to get it calories, easy to digest calories. This literally requires zero digestion. This is super important. If you want to put on weight, this is like the easiest way to do it. So this is important right here. Sugar. Sugar. You got to erase those holistic nutbag ideas in your head, because if you're afraid of sugar and you have sugar, it's just going to exit right out of you when you put it into you, because subconsciously you're like, oh man, I heard this is going to make things worse. A lot of kids might have a reaction to sugar because it's linked to the conflict shock, that shocking moment. Hey, you can't have soda. Go to your room. You stole a soda. No video games for a week. You know, maybe somebody always has symptoms when they do have sugar because it's somehow linked. It's somehow a PTSD trigger linked back to a conflict shock. So sugar is important. Another important thing for people to eat is a good source of protein. Also, another good source of sugar is milk. The part with the lactose in it gets digested in the stomach, it gets absorbed in the stomach, and then the protein in the fat part of it, they sit in the stomach a little bit longer to get broken down and get absorbed into the bloodstream by the intestines. And if you're reacting to milk, then somehow it is related to a past traumatic event. And just think, for a child, for a baby, what's the most important thing to their survival? It's mom and milk. Those are like literally the two things that are keeping the baby alive. And with modern society's kind of bad raising of children, like the mom going back, I know it's none of your guys' fault. It's just how our society is nowadays, where the mother is really encouraged to go back to work, like literally like days after giving birth. And in the wild, if the baby is separated from mom, they don't really have good chances of survival. So the baby is going to be really stressed out and going to be have an easier time experiencing a conflict shock when he isn't attached to mom, because just in Mother Nature, being attached to mom means survival. She feeds me, she protects me, she keeps me warm. Without that, I'm going to freeze to death, I'm going to starve to death, or some animal is going to come along and eat me. So that's how I'm encouraging guys to start thinking about this. Protein is also going to be really important. So there are a lot of like vegan and vegetarian diets that you should stay away from at all costs. The only thing I'm going to tell you about protein is, we're going to want to prepare our meats in a certain way. A lot of the ways that we cook meat today is like we want to cook it fast. It's just like throw it on the grill and fry it, like cook it as fast as possible. I'm too busy, I got to cook it as fast as possible. What this does is it causes like the proteins to not break down properly. So a protein is made up of a bunch of amino acids, and these bonds there's like water in these bonds somehow woven into them, and when you cook meat super hot and super fast, the water evaporates. So if you cook the meat over 200 degrees Fahrenheit or over 100 degrees Celsius, the water evaporates and leaves the meat, and it leaves it like super hard and just not pleasant to eat. Like, when you're just like chewing on a steak and you're like, man, this is chewier than bubble gum, and then you swallow it and you're just like in a bad mood and you feel tired. That's because your body is expending so much energy to arguably digest leather. So there are a lot of different tenderizing techniques, and the cut of the meat affects this quite a bit. Like my bicep and my legs do a lot of work. So, like in the cow, the toughest cuts of meat are the pieces of meat that are doing the most work. And then the meat that is very nice and soft and tender is, like on the back, that doesn't do a lot of work. And again, that's a whole nother video you could watch videos all day on that, on the science of tenderizing meat. But you can chemically do it with store-bought products. They're like to tenderize meat, which are usually come from papaya, the enzyme in papaya, the enzyme in pineapple. These different marinades can break down the meat fibers. There's also dry aging and wet aging meats that can make the meat more tender. You can also do this physically by beating the meat with a hammer, or by stabbing it with a fork, or using one of those punchers where they punch the meat and they make it more tender. And then really the ultimate way is cooking or slow cooking. Slow cooking. And there's something about, with like all the collagen and all the connective tissues together, when it's been held at around, like 200 degrees Fahrenheit or below, somewhere below boiling point for about, I don't know, like 2 to 3 hours, where all the amino acids just break down, and you just pull it apart. You know it's right when you can pull it apart with, like when you go to pick it up and the meat just falls apart in your hands. But today, most of the meat that we're eating, you bite into it and it's like literally eating bubble gum. Most of the meat that I eat in the store today. And the second it goes down into your stomach, your brain does this calculation of, all right, how much energy am I going to need to expend to digest this? And it's like, oh, a lot of energy. Okay, I'm gonna make you tired. All right, I got to take all this, I have 500 calories in the tank right now because half of it's going to diarrhea town. The stuff that the calories that I was expecting got diarrheaed out. All right, I'm gonna have to digest. We're just gonna, nope, you're not walking around. I'm taking this energy and I'm putting it towards digestion. And as far as if you're going to eat raw vegetables, I would put it through the juicer. That's going to make it the most easiest to digest and digestible, or put it through a very long cooking process to make it nice and mushy. Raw vegetables are going to be very hard. Raw vegetables take a long time to digest. Even if you have a cow's digestive system, it just takes a very long time. And then we get to starches. Now, if you're going to eat something like bread, again, you're going to have to get your belief system right about it. You have, like, if you believe bread's the devil because you've listened to One Too Many Carnivores on YouTube, then we have to get that belief system right, and I have plenty of videos on that. But we're also usually encouraged to have whole wheat bread. And whole wheat bread is the hardest to digest of breads, even though it has more nutrients in it. But if you're going to go for a bread, you're going to want to make sure that it's gone through the sourdough process. Because what has happened is the bacteria have digested half. They've turned these long, this is why people usually get tired after a super starchy meal. They take these long starches and they get broken. Instead of them being hundreds of bonds long that you need to break down, that you need to use protein to create enzymes to break down, by the time it reaches, if it goes through the sourdough process, it's all going to be small little things for you to digest. Cream of wheat is also, it's been ground up, it's been cooked in water. Cream of wheat melts in your mouth. Mashed potatoes, it melts. What's going to be easier to digest, a baked potato or a mashed potato? Subconsciously, when I bite into a mashed potato, I can just feel my body going oh, this is going to be tough. And then when I take a spoonful of mashed potatoes, my body's like, whoa, where'd it go? It's already, wow, it melted in my mouth. Where'd it go? So, these are some of the things that I would consider when you're in a flare and, you want to give your body some easier to digest foods. Number one is getting that sugar, making your proteins easier to digest, and making your starches easier to digest. And dairy is always a good option. And if you have trouble with any of these foods, then you need to work with your belief systems and how around these foods, because of the holistic nuttery out there. And then also see how they might be PTSD triggers. But you need to spend the majority of your time. You could do this diet perfect. Also look into the work of Weston A. Price. He shares, he's literally like Weston A. Price philosophy. He was a dentist in the 1930s that traveled the world and discovered what primitive populations were eating. They were so healthy, they had a 0% cavity rate. So it's best to follow his methodology while looking for what was the traumatic event that put your gun to overdrive and its PTSD triggers and how it was at the scene of the crime of the conflict shock. That is the cure. That is the therapy. It's sitting down and writing this stuff out. When I work one-on-one with somebody, literally like 75% of the time, we're talking about the conflict shock. I'm really not spending that much time being like, oh, like let's have a good cry, get some tissues. We're gonna have a good cry sesh and get this out of us. I'm trying to find what's hidden in the subconscious. And most of the time, just seeing it consciously for the first time will, sometimes somebody will yawn or, they'll feel a big sigh of relief or they'll get goosebumps. And that's when we know, like, the subconscious has released this PTSD trigger. And that can cut somebody's symptoms in half. Like, literally, I've seen some people, like, in just one session, or, when people do my 13-day protocol, literally within, most people only make it 7 days into my protocol, and they're like, I don't need to do anymore. Life's already back to normal. I'm good. I can eat with my friends. I can go out. I can work again. I don't have to watch my diet. It's almost like it never happened. And they invested their energy, they invested their brain power in finding the conflict, writing down the PTSD triggers, and seeing how it relates back to the conflict shock, learning the basics of German New Medicine, getting the silly holistic beliefs out of their head, and then last but not least, well, last and least, is dealing with the conflict and making your life less stressful. It's actually the least important thing to do, which I know doesn't jive with what we know today about stress, but that is what I've seen gives people success the fastest and the easiest way. And my 13-day protocol walks you through this step by step.